So, hello. I'm quite excited to hold this panel because you will see that it's quite connected with my career, and it's something personal for me. And I'm super excited from guests who will be here, because I think we can discuss the topic of blending of games, of mobile games and console games together a lot from different points of view, from different industries, and we will see what is the result, if those two words are becoming the one or not. So let me introduce myself a bit so you understand why it's quite personal for me. I have started making games in early 2000, focused mainly on PC, even though my first commercial game was for PDA, Pocket PC. It was a fighting game. We sold like 10 copies, I think. Then I have started with other studios, and in 2010 I started to work as a lead game designer at Activision's exclusive studio Cauldron. After that, I have started my own company called Fun2 Robots, and that company vision was to bring console-like experience to the mobiles. We had to freeze the company after a couple of years. But then a friend of mine called me to Denmark, where I helped to start or grown studio called Napno Games, and I helped them to build the first game for Sony PlayLink, which is way how you play on a Sony PlayStation through your mobile. You control it through your mobile. It's great for casual players, for party games, for example. Then I came back and I went for a while to Jiva to help setting also higher production quality bars, let's say, and standards, especially for the new title, which hopefully is going to be announced soon. And I have again applied many principles from making console games there. So as you can see, melting of phones and consoles is strongly connected with my career, and I still believe that bringing console-like experience to mobiles is something what has a huge potential. There is many things where console games are inspiration for mobiles, and there are starting to be also a bunch of really important things where mobiles inspire the big games. And that leads me to my first guest, the man leading company with currently the most successful Czech mobile game, and its success is not coming right now from the cutting-edge visuals, let's say, but from addictive gameplay, fair free-to-play principles, and excellent BI and marketing, which is in-house. So please welcome to the stage CEO of Jiva, Miloš Enderle.
Hi, Vladio.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
So, Miloš, there is many things which we discussed in last months, which are converting as a level of quality of art, let's say, for example. But there are also things which, at least now, seems to be very disconnected. And for me, it is especially the main business model of free-to-play as a lead model for mobiles, and premium as a lead model for PC and consoles. What do you think? Are those two things staying separate, or are those two things coming together in the future as well?
I think they will stay separate, and there will be definitely attempts to combine them together. And even now there is inspiration from both sides, and we can mention maybe Blizzard, which started Hearthstone on the mobile as a free-to-play game, and after that launch Overwatch as a PC and console game, which used these techniques. And from my perspective, it's about how you plan create this game. And this gives me to the talk of the Dan Wawra, which looking to the game from the story-based perspective. Then game has some start, it's their story, and has also some end. And I think it's only part of the games, and games world is much more wider. And for this type of games, for the story-based, I think premium, and then it is paid. It completely makes sense. Same for Kuba from Amanita for their games. But games which we are doing are like more close to something like sport is developing. And if you have looked, for example, to snowboarding, how long time they've developed this sport to be on Olympics, and Esther Ledecká win last title, then was take some time. And this early adopters, these influencers, define what the sports will be, what will be competition. There is this URAM, there is slalom, there is many others, and this inspire also ski competition, and I think this is how free to play model works. Then for some games is better paid model, and for some is definitely free to play. Then I believe both stay, and there will be attempts to combine them together.
Okay, thank you. I also know that you really like sport and the spirit of the fair play. And we discussed many times e-sport, and if mobile games can be e-sport, and especially for me now, what's important or interesting is if cross-platform games as Fortnite, for example, or some other cross-platform games can still stay fair play, can still be e-sport. So there are two questions. Can mobile games be e-sport, and can be e-sport cross-platform?
Sure. I am strongly right, and this will happen. This will be fact, and mobile will comes as a next esport. And I think problem is then now we are overseeing in games which are calling like VR mobile esports, like Hearthstone, like Clash Royale. Then they are copying principles which they overseeing from PC market. And from my perspective, this looks like more they are focusing on pro gaming and these top players. And my thinking about the esport is more wider, and it's more like bottom up. Then I think based on the local communities, you can build this system which comes to the top. And again, this snowboard is a very good example, because this starts somewhere and build this ground for whole sport, and finally came to the Olympics. And it's very difficult to define like. This will be the top, and you are there now. Then I believe in this principle bottom up.
Okay, but so you think there are genres which can work cross-platform as an esport?
Oh, cross-platform. It's very difficult for games like Fortnite. Definitely not. Because there will be definitely benefits from controlling game from the PC console and mobile. And we overseeing, by the way, even on Smashing 4, difference between phones and tablets. Then there will be definitely this type of differences. But I think, and this is how I am looking to the game world. It's much more wider. And one of the things which comes to the game and come to the game even now, it's TV shows. TV shows like Who Want to Be Millionaire, 1/100. They are working with a little different aspects, like drama aspects and all this stuff. And imagine these quiz shows. It's no problem to run that on the mobile, on the PCs, on the consoles, and can be very interesting. Then this type of party games, I can imagine then this can work cross-platform. But this first-person shooting games, there will be every time a limitation, and if there will be fair competition, then will be on one type of devices.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, and let's invite another guest to our table. it's a guy who made the mobile game which received an Apple Award, and now he's making the leading VR title, or I believe it's the best VR title, which is now on a market. Please welcome Jan Ilavský. Ciao. So, take a seat whenever you want. So, Jan.
Yes.
You've made Chameleon Run, which has quite polished art. From my point of view, the art, even though it's simple shapes, it has high-tech reflections, it has immersive 3D camera, it has some of those elements which I would call more console-like, and it worked very well. In the end, the proof is Apple Design Award. Was that really some kind of inspiration for you, or you haven't inspired in consoles?
Actually, I didn't have a console back then, so it was definitely...
Let's say PC then.
Yeah, it was inspiration from PC, definitely. I think when you are making a mobile game or any kind of game, there are three limitations, and first one is money or time you can spend on that. Then there are some technical difficulties, and there are also some technical differences between devices. I mean, like if you have small screen, you can't have I don't know, very complicated graphics. If you have a big screen, you can do much more. It's about controls and all that stuff. So when I started working on a Chameleon Run, it was mostly about how we can make a perfect game for this device. So I'm not sure if we are actually taking any ideas from different platforms, but of course we are, because those platforms are there. So the techniques which are used on PC or consoles are used on mobile, and if someone creates something on mobile, it will come to PC or console if it works there.
Okay, but you made with Chameleon Run an interesting step that you started on mobiles, but then you tried console. Now you are on a Switch.
Yes.
What's that as an experience? Because there is more games which goes from the PC to mobile. Let's say Transistor or This War Is Mine, but this was the other way around.
Yeah, I think that Nintendo Switch is a console, but it's very similar to the mobile experience. If the difference is in the controls mainly, but in Chameleon Run it's almost the same thing. You just need two buttons. On a mobile you have two sides, so it's okay. So when we moved to the Switch, even the performance was almost the same. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to make almost any changes. So the game is basically the same, and it works the same on both devices.
And what about the audience? How they react on a game which coming from the mobile to the console?
Because we are really bad in marketing, and most of the success of Chameleon Run comes from Apple promoting the game,
right?
Which obviously doesn't happen on Nintendo, or I'm not sure how it works there. So the Nintendo wasn't as a good success as mobile, of course.
Okay, but now you have Beat Games and you're doing Beat Saber, so that's a console game for VR, so that's kind of on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So if you compare now those two developments from the production point of view, how difficult it is to produce things for a VR, is it really different from what you have done for Chameleon Run, for example?
It's not such a big difference. There are some problems when you are making a VR game. It's mainly about how it feels. So you have to try it almost all the time with the headset on. So the main difference is in how to make the game, how to feel about it. Programmers and many of the other people in the game industry are quite lazy people physically, usually, as I am. So if I have to spend like 8 hours smashing with my hands all around, and this is something I'm not very comfortable with, so it was hard physically. not like technically or other way.
That's a good point. So developing VR games makes developers more fit,
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. All right. But then let's move to our next guest, and it's probably someone you all know as well. Not only because he was moderating the whole GDS, but also because he is one of the best Czech game journalists, and his interviews are legendary. So applause for Pavel Dobrovský. Hi.
So hello again, yeah, and hello guys, hello Vlad. I feel a little uncomfortable sitting here right now because usually I just
Do you want to
come
change seats?
before the talk or after the talk, not in the middle of the talk.
Yeah, I can see your point, but let's now talk about a lot of your journalist experiences. So you're making interviews with many people, many successful developers worldwide. You probably know about many cases, or some cases at least, of famous PC developers starting their own studios or their studios for mobile games. Or do you know? Do you remember some success story or someone who used his or her knowledge to build successful mobile games?
Actually, I don't. I mean, like, there must be people that are coming from PC or console development to mobile games, but they are usually in the seat of sort of a consultant. They consult the game mechanics, and there must be some developers that founded new mobile game studios, but it's not common. It's not like you see it every day, because usually the PC or console game developers, they stick to their platform. And how it works usually is that big companies, they establish sort of a smaller studio with the development program for mobile games or for mobile phones or whatever. And they sort of extend the portfolio of their well-known brands. So we can have an example here of Hitman Go or Tomb Raider Go or many other titles that are major on a big platforms, or they are very successful on big platforms, and then they sort of extend to smaller platforms like the mobile gaming, iOS or Android, it really doesn't matter. And I think that many developers, what they do is they develop for PC first or for console first, and when they have a chance, they enlarge the portfolio and they bring the same game to the mobile platform, which is not really something like a recipe for success, but they try at least because they have a chance to put it on the App Store or somewhere and to sell it again.
Yeah, I think about this we will talk soon about the next guest. But before we will, I think there is at least one good example, which is Marek Rabas, who started Madfinger, and their unique selling point, from my point of view, was exactly bringing console-like experience to mobiles. And they were super successful with this in the time, especially in the time when there were no other games looking like that. So that's the one thing in my mind, but probably there is more. But when you are now, like,
I'll interrupt you here. You're correct about Marek Rabas, but I think when you are a developer for a platform like PC or for console, you sort of learn the patterns of gaming on that platform. And people are looking for patterns. People are looking for something they recognize and they know. And it's very hard to replicate something like a detailed RPG on iOS, for example. So if you are a PC developer, you want to do this type of games, you do it on PC. And there your players recognize the patterns and they play it on that platform. They won't move to mobile.
To mobile. Okay, and when you are reviewing games, for example, when you are reviewing PC and console games, you can use the same scale, let's say, for all those games. But then when you are reviewing mobile games, you probably review, like, you cannot compare them together usually. You have to...
Oh, you can. The game is good or game is bad. It doesn't really matter if it's on PC or console or mobile. It's a question of you play the game, you see what is it about, if it fulfills what is it about, if it's technically good, of course, and you can review it as well. The problem that we face, I think, in gaming journalism when it comes to mobile games is that we are not really needed as a journalist to review the games because it goes in completely different direction. People are deciding what to buy according to, I don't know, if the title is featured on somewhere, on Apple or maybe on Google, or if they're friends. The word of mouth is very strong in mobile games, stronger than in classical games or traditional games.
Right. But there is one example now which we briefly discussed also with Milos, and that's Fortnite, which is super successful, and that's basically destroying all the walls between platforms and bringing or trying to bring the same experience on all platforms. Do you think, to be honest, I haven't played it, but do you think is that way to go? Because from my experience, it has to be frustrating for those mobile players.
Fortnite on iOS is not really that good as Fortnite on PC or console. It has worse graphics, the aiming is a little bad, but definitely it is a way. It's a question of time before the phones are powerful enough to run such a games, and I believe it's the future. It can work, and why not? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So.
And let me maybe add one more thing, that when I speak to developers, the PC or console developers, they don't really mention mobile gaming, but usually they mention VR gaming. That like they believe, they are huge believers in VR, and that's the way the industry is maybe shifting in some way.
All right. All right. Okay. So thank you. And the fourth guest has. He has a company which is super unique from my point of view worldwide, and the reason is that this company is doing games which are premium, which are cross-platform, but which are also true art. And so please welcome to stage CEO of Amanita, Jakub Dvorský. Hi, Jakub. Ciao.
Thanks for having me, Aja.
Thank you, Kubo, for coming. So all your titles are beautiful 2D games with casual gameplay.
Thank you.
And but also that's, I guess, the recipe for success on all platforms, isn't it? Like that?
Yeah. Well, we are in a lucky position that our games really can work on almost any platform, and that's because of the control. We make point-and-click adventure games, and there the controls are not so important. And I think controls are the crucial thing on all these platforms, and on mobile it's different. Those are touch devices, while consoles are gamepad, PC, mouse, and keyboard. And we can do that on all of that, and it works well.
So it doesn't limit gameplay in any way?
I believe not.
Okay.
We recently released Machinarium for Switch, which is the perfect example how it can work all together, because we released on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 a long time before. We polished the gamepad controls, and we also polished the touch controls on mobiles. And on Switch there is both, and you can just switch, which is a good name. You can switch between gamepad controls and touch controls very easily. And many people prefer gamepad, and many people prefer the touch controls. And yeah.
Okay, and so have you been planning to do those games cross-platform from the beginning, or was that more like result, as Pavel, for example, mentioned? Was that more like extending your portfolio to other platforms after some leading platform?
Well, in the past, we designed it for PC, just for PC, and then we add the other platforms later. and it worked well. And nowadays we designed games like with gamepad, mouse, and touch devices in mind, okay. With a touch control as a primary platform. But still, the gamepad works also quite well.
All right, thank you. And in the end, I have a special guest here. He is leading a Czech branch of company which redefined many things in multiplayer gaming. The company which has offices in 15 different countries and employ over 4,000 of people. So please welcome the game director of World of Tanks, Paul Barnett. Můžeme ještě. Nice to meet you, Paul. Hey. Now there are three, but
hello.
So, so you are a game director of one of the most popular or successful multiplayer game worldwide, but for example, comparing to Fortnite, which we discussed here before, you decided to not go cross-platform with that game. For Fortnite, they brought it to all platforms and try to make the same experience on mobiles and let players play together. In your case, you decided to not extend to other platforms, if I'm right, and you made separate game called Blitz for the other platforms. What was the reason for this?
Well, I'm not sure I would mistake strategy for lethargy. Gaming's changed, and one of the great things about gaming is it changes all the time. So a gamer from 10 years ago, if transformed through time to here, would have great difficulty recognizing elements of gaming. So who's playing games? That's changed, it's grown and expanded in ways that no one really believed. There's an entire group of gamers who feel cheated because they think they are pure gamers, and they don't understand why there's these other people who have started playing games, like their parents, or maybe their sister if they're a boy. They're very frustrated that games makes an awful lot of money, but not necessarily with the games they're used to. The way we get games to people has changed. It's no longer just about buying plastic, which is what it used to be. You no longer have to have a place in your house specially dedicated to it. The amount of specialist equipment has fallen off. We've now got the black glass, which you get on your phones, which has dramatically changed how gaming's done. And what you've seen over the last probably 15 years, payment systems have changed radically. Systems have come and gone. The amount of people who are playing has increased exponentially. The types of games has changed. In the last 15 years, we have moved from an obsession with photorealism, and instead we've moved back into abstracting and simplifying and perfecting. And for the last 7 years, we've had walled gardens. I mean, it's very lovely that Fortnite can play on all these different things, but if you'd have tried that 7 years ago, you'd have got nowhere. Right. I mean, Nintendo wouldn't have let you, Apple wouldn't have let you. You certainly couldn't have bought something on a PlayStation and had it credited to an Xbox. That's heresy of the highest order. Then what you've got is a massive improvement in small technology. Screen resolutions are amazing. Touch controls have come on tremendously. Also, players' understanding of the platforms has gone up dramatically. There was a time where you would have an argument, a very real argument, one that might actually involve hitting people. Although gamers, when they try to hit people, it's like a wheezy cough. They can't hit people very hard. They sit in darkness all the time. But it was about precision of shooting on Call of Duty on the PC to Call of Duty on the console. And the PC heads were exceedingly angry that the console game was too easy. Exceedingly angry about it. Right. And then miraculously, Call of Duty sells majority of its stuff on console. Doesn't even sell it on PC anymore. And so this lack of super fidelity has been replaced with a comfort of group play. We also have group play, which we never had before, not to the level we have now. The magnificence of group play is if you've never experienced it before, if you've never really gone into a game and played with other people, it is a compelling love affair which will blow your mind. Because all of a sudden you meet other people, there's a human connectivity to it, the agency changes. So the bit that you were saying, sorry I came in quite late, the bit you were saying I think is absolutely right. Having a set of controls that are transferable, I'm not sure the controls make the game, but they're certainly one of the guardians to the imagination space. And when you're playing a game, when you're in flow, it might be on a handheld with your thumb for 30 seconds, or it might be a lean-in game. Like the game I make, World of Tanks, is you lean into the screen and you use both hands and you sort of lean into the experience and your ability to realize the outside world narrows. Whereas in a console, you sort of lean back on your couch and you sort of elbow people and you have conversation. Look at that, what a goal. FIFA's great. Right? And then with sort of phones, you sort of curl up and point, and you're sort of doing them anywhere. And so, were you to ask me today, do I think we could make a game that could go through the different areas? I would go, yeah, absolutely. But I go further than your title, because I think streaming through television is going to become the next great gateway for gaming. And once we've got that figured out, once controllers have just been reduced to your phone, once you can just get your phone out and fire up your gaming Netflix anywhere, and you can play with decent ping, anything with that controls, what a gaming world we'll live in. It'll make this revolution look like a very small revolution. To answer your question, no, you can't play our game on all the different formats. That wasn't on purpose. Sorry about that, a bit long-winded.
All right, thank you very much. That was a really nice answer. I have one more for you, and that's about the business model. You already mentioned that business model got changed through time. I guess your game started in 2010, if I'm right, and it started, and it's still a freemium game, and this helped. The whole wargaming became one of the biggest game companies in the last years, even though the other PC developers or console developers are still stick to premium model usually. So why do you think the freemium could be also the future of the PC?
Thank you for that very easy question. That's very simple to answer. If you are Activision or you're EA or your Ubisoft, you were looking at somewhere between 20 months to 34 months at approximately 300 people. You might have a little ramp up at the beginning, but then if you're Ubisoft, at 900 people at the outset. You're looking at about a 100 million advertising spend. You're looking at worldwide releases, and you're looking at cutting deals with every single platform known to man. If you then turn around and say to them, and it's free, their accountants' heads will explode. Because right now, they have a fundamental model that works. We can put it out as a digital download. Not only can they put it as a digital download, by the way, but they've done a really great trick. They've done away with having to make a disc. They've done away with having to make a box. They've got rid of having to stock it. They've got rid of having to ship it out to people. And they've got rid of having to give up 35% at retail. And yet they've maintained their price point, and they've maintained an incredibly high digital download price point. So why on earth would they go free when they don't have to maintain servers, they don't have to maintain a live team, they don't have to maintain teams to push out new content? They can just grab all the money at the beginning, pay off all the development, and sail into the sunset. And so they're not likely to move anytime soon. On the other hand, if you're a small developer, then it's almost pointless going free to play, because your teams are reasonably tight, your budgets are reasonably slight, and you can go out at what is an aggressive price in the market, but is actually a pretty good price if you're a small developer. So I think it's pretty good for small developers to stay around there. And there's government funding, if you call it art, and all that sort of stuff. When you look at free to play, though, you've got a different thing going on. We're going through this cycle of free to play where it keeps changing and altering and improving and figuring itself out. And here's what we now know, and it's different than it was 5 years ago. Number one thing, if the game is good, free is unbelievably attractive. Players like free, which is ironic because on PC games they've often got a $1,000 PC and they're paying $50 a month for their internet, but they want to grouse about how much it costs to buy a game. But they'll download free and they'll play free. And the big change that we've had now is people have become calmer about paying for things, provided you understand that they now understand math. So if you bring out loot boxes with a very low chance of a hit rate and you charge a lot of money for it, these kids can call up Excel, work it out, and point out you're going to cost them $27 million, and they will then get the internet on fire, and Star Wars Battlefield will have to change. They'll have to change the loot boxes. So you don't do that. But you also don't try and suggest you don't have to pay anything. That's ridiculous. If you play a free-to-play game and you don't give me any money, then you're content that's having a good time. That's what you are. And the trade I will give you for being content having a good time is it will take you longer. And skill might be a vector, but you'll be playing longer and you'll be content for my paying players. For my paying players, I'm paying so they don't have to spend as much time. I'm also allowing them to pay to soften their skill. Now with my game, that's great, because everyone who plays my game is very old, and everyone who plays my game can't play fast games anymore. I'm an old man shooter game, or old woman shooter game, played by dads, often drunk, and they've got about $20 spare here and there, so they don't mind buying a tank. They also don't mind playing it because it's the only game they can still beat their son at. So I found my niche, and though we're free to play, I'd say we were free to pay, and the design ethos we have is we're trying to make it fair to play. And that's been the big enlightenment that I've seen in the payment. If you go back, gosh, 5 years, probably 5 years, the free-to-play games were murderous. Pinch points, paywalls, hard, grinding, monetization out the wazoo. Mobile games, I'm getting into technicalities, mobile games used to talk like only 2% of your player base monetized, and of the ones that monetized, only like 2% of those spent anything worthwhile. And so they weren't really games, they were monetization traps. They were built above the sort of theory of Vegas. They were built on compulsion loops and replay loops. World of Tanks isn't built like that. World of Tanks has no route to unlimited spending. If I give you an unlimited credit card, you can't spend a lot of money. You can't spend it unless you play, and then you can't spend very much unless you're actually good at the game. Which, if you tried to explain that in San Francisco, they'd throw you out of the company. So, I work for a reasonably nice free-to-play game. And I also give codes out for tanks, but usually only to dads.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll ask all of you here, please, if you have some questions, I would like all of my guests, if you can take mics and start the panel discussion. Before we have first questions here, I would maybe start asking you. So this year, for the first time in history, the mobile revenue account more than 50% of the global game market. And it's increasing rapidly. Epany CEO predicts that the next year it could be even 60% of the whole game market. So what does this mean for the whole industry? What does this mean for you personally, for your companies?
Well, for us, it's we already are on mobiles the strongest. Like, we focus on mobile platforms because that's what fits our games maybe the best, or most of them. So it's not a surprise. And what I wanted to add to the discussion about the pricing, it's connected with it. That's the whole pricing. It's not only about how to squeeze the most money out of the players and how it's effective for the developers. It's also a message which tells you something about the game the whole pricing model, and it of course it changes the design of the game. Free-to-play games are different from design perspective than premium games. I take our games as a little finished products, like little packages you own, when you buy and own forever, and we are not changing it later, or maybe we are just updating it now and then, but it's finished product. It's not a service or anything like that, and so that's a message. And so players can choose what they really want on this front. However, I understand that premium games are such small niche these days, such a small piece of market. But I hope it will survive.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I will follow up because Dan mentioned in his presentation diversity. And I think this is very important to see how we are offering this game, because this can be different and people can choose. And I think Paul mentioned very, very important two facts. One is then kids start now playing on the touchpads on the mobiles from beginning. We didn't. We came to the computers when we were, I don't know, 15 years old, and this is very important fact. And there is much more players now, and we need to teach them how to play games, explain them some mechanics. And they probably come to the level of the core game players which hate Diablo from the Blizzard and these type of things. I think we are living with very exciting industry which is changing every day. I think very interesting. It's this announcement from Epic, and this is second what I would like point from Paul talk. It's this ecosystem, because this big giants, Ubisoft, EA, overseeing market from some perspective, but look to the music, how changed with the products like Spotify and Apple Music, and probably when Epic Games come with new store, which is much more fair to the developers, which putting in place things which are now hidden in the vehicle, BI marketing monetization, which is very complicated for small teams. And come this with package with influencers, then can be very valuable service, and can be like service when App Store and Play Store starts. Then I think it's very important to see this from this dynamic perspective, and from the perspective of adult players which are growing like little different way than we grew up.
Thank you. Some of you guys? No?
The core answer to your question is more people playing more games is a better thing, more platforms is a better thing, more geographical regions is a better thing. It's just a better thing. Don't be afraid of it would be my answer. More people are playing games, that's good. That means more people will make games, that means we'll have more interesting games and we'll find more things to do. So shouldn't be afraid of it, we should rejoice and celebrate it. Make games, not war, unless it's World of Tanks.
I agree with that, but again, I want to mention Nintendo Switch, which is kind of a very interesting device, which I think is the near future, even for other companies like Sony and Microsoft. I don't know how they will tackle it, but I think is so convincing that you have like proper console with the gamepad controls and everything's you can play it on big TV in your living room and still have it on the go and have all the advantages of mobile devices, and it's also cheap. I think this is the way. This is one of the ways, and a true device which connects these two worlds we are talking about. So that's maybe interesting.
That's nice, and you're right, guys. I have small kids as you do, and those kids, they can control touchscreen like a couple of hours after birth. So like I also realized that as a console developer, like those kids, they probably don't play consoles in basic school at all. Like I have a bunch of friends and their kids, they are playing only mobile games. So I think we need to keep in mind this, and this is the trend we can see now. But let's also ask the audience. So do we have a question? Aziz, do you have mic? Can we ask someone?
I have a question. Or yes.
Okay.
I have another question.
All right.
So there are some games which use smartphones to play together on a bigger screen, like Vladia's Frantics or the Jackling Box party games or Kahoot. What are your stances on these types of games? Because for me, for example, a prospect of RPG play together where everyone has secret info on his screen, but they play together on a big screen is an exciting example for me.
So, guys, some of you?
Maybe I can react because this is something what I really believe, and how I mentioned this difference between how now mobile world copying in esport genre this PC esport. Then my example is when you came to the BlizzCon here in the Saska Arena, and you can see how many from audience, everyone have this mobile device, and nobody is in place to play some game or support it what happening on the stage. And I truly believe in this type of concepts, and this is about the platforms what Kuba also mentioned, Nintendo Switch, and there definitely will come new platforms. And I also truly believe then in this combination with sport games and TV shows to some very exciting packages. Then we probably in few years from now, there nobody recognize esport from sport, because there will be guys who do sport but have some gadgets, some devices which gives them like strategic depth of the games which we are now playing on the PCs and consoles. Then I think this is good example how this world is changing and developing.
Thank you.
So, about 2 years ago, a bit longer actually, 3 years ago, gosh, it was that long ago, we were working extensively with Comcast and EA to look at streaming and gaming. And there are certain things that become apparent when you do it. The first is, if you can get your phone out and everyone in front of the television can then interact with it, it becomes much more compelling and people are much more likely to do it. The second thing is that when you do that, it actually attracts people that wouldn't normally game. So if you imagine it's a golf match playing, and a guy makes a putt and he misses, and then it goes to an ad break, and the ad break is actually you trying to make that putt. And then it collects all the data and tells you, well, turns out that 72% of the golfers at home made that putt, he really was an idiot. Or imagine it was a play on American football, or imagine it was a penalty shootout. So you've got that sort of instantaneous live interaction that you can do across an entire group of people, across entire cities, across entire countries, and across entire continents. That's really exciting. Live events will be amazing when you can use your phone to interact with live events. That will change things dramatically. And streaming, don't underestimate streaming. There's a lot of technical people who scratch their heads and say you can't get the latency. It's just not true. The latency problem was cracked 3 years ago. It's just that the problem isn't the latency, the problem is the plastic. So expect Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple all to move into some form of streaming, and expect Netflix to do it. And at the same time, expect to see EA, Activision, Tencent, Ubisoft, Valve. They're going to come back and have a go at it, because if you can crack that, you get to your switch point. Because if I can stream to a television, I can stream to a phone. I don't need the processing at the point of play. The processing happens elsewhere, lightning fast. So it's going to be unrecognizable in about 2 years.
Okay, we have another question.
Thank you. Just It's a little bit maybe convoluted question. The fact that there's different ages, like father and son, like for example, for me as a father whose child is quite far away from him, and the fact that for me even a game like League of Legends, which is on PC, is a little bit complicated for me compared to 20-year-olds or teenagers who play it and they perceive information like from Facebook and Twitter and everything on a much faster speed than I do. What do you think is the formula to connect different age groups in a multiplayer game through continents? Like you just said, for example, that fathers of your game, like the fathers in your game, because they find it a little bit slower speed, they can compete with their children. What do you feel?
Okay, so when you're young, high arousal, high attention gaming on high-speed plastic is very compelling because you can be completely obsessed about it. So you're doing high arousal, high attention. Diablo, click, 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 click. League of Legends, click, 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 click. It's a very pleasing way of getting into what's called game flow, right? But high arousal, high attention isn't particularly conducive to people enjoying themselves. So examples of father-son or parent-child games that I think have been successful: Star Wars Lego, I think was excellent at it. Minecraft, I think, does an exceedingly good job at it. World of Tanks, oddly, isn't too bad if your kid's young enough because you can play the baby arty games. But I think a game has to be planned to do that. You have to have the right amount of communication between the people. You also have to accept that people like different things. So when I'm playing with my child, the decision I'm making is to play with my child, not to enjoy the game I'm playing. It's the reason we watch the same movie again that I already know, that I'm not very interested in, because I'm watching it with my child. So I think from the adult point of view, you have to give a little to be part of that play experience. You also have to experience that the child themselves is going to want to play it their way and going to want to play it at their skill set. So, you know, The Sims, for instance, I think is very good for that sort of thing. So I think it all gets into what the game is. It's more complicated than it should be. I guess have kids younger, so they're closer to you on age. That might be an answer. But yeah, high arousal, high attention games are very difficult for people who are over the age of 26.
Okay, I guess.
I would like to append only one thing. It's this is benefit of computer games at all, because we have this benefit. Like if father playing with his kids soccer, then there is a huge difference, and this handicap cannot be solved. But we as game designers can create games which solve this handicap in the design. Then, for example, there can be game which will use this fast pace for the kids because they are really fast and they have fast eyes. But for us, we can be like trainers or someone who have more strategy, role on the field. Then I think it's up to us for the game designers what we design to this type of purposes.
All right. So, is there any last question, because we are slowly getting out of the time? Somebody? Okay, so let's end up with, do we have some?
Hi. So what I want to ask is, if you look at the trends in like recent multiplayer games, and especially like massive online multiplayer games, what tends to happen is that the developers try to segregate people, and they try to like minimize the amount of interaction that players get between each other, especially like in MMOs where it's like absolutely nonsensical. So why do you think that this trend is happening? Why are games that are meant to be played with other people losing the element of being forced to interact with one another?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the question. Massively multiplayer games, you mean things like 1,000 people being in a server at the same time? You mean that sort of stuff? Well, that sort of stuff's madness, and it's really, really hard. We're tribal creatures. We work at about 30 to 90 is a pretty good marker. That's why clan systems and guild systems pretty much hover around about those numbers. Other designers who are moving into design that have never done multiplayer games are just making all the same mistakes that they make. Some of it's tech-driven. You've got to have your instances, you've got to have your server ping, you've got to have your ability to have your communication systems so that they work, you've got to have your ping rate down, you can't have a lot of people in there. The more complicated the game, the more difficult it is to put a lot of people in it. The Z-axis causes all sorts of trouble, mass texture creates all sorts of trouble. So there's lots of things going on. I'm not sure there's a policy. I don't think I've ever been to a design meeting where a group of designers have sat around and said, I think this idea of isolating people is fantastic, we should do more of it. I think it's probably incompetence rather than conspiracy. What I would be interested in is examples of it being done well, so I can understand the basis of the question, because I think people playing together is really important. I don't see it being reflected as aggressive design. I think it's probably accidental or tech-driven.
Okay, it wasn't really like aimed at the tech constraints. What I was more like aiming towards, for example, is World of Warcraft. What used to happen is that people didn't have any convenient way to get together. So they had to spam like various chats, etc., which forced them to like create their own communities, like guilds and this kind of stuff. But now, a lot of games have queuing, which means that you don't have to interact with anyone. You just press a button, you get assigned some random people who you will never interact with again, possibly, and then you do the thing that you were supposed to do there, and you quit, and that's it. And like, you do play with other people technically, but it's all hollow, because you don't actually need each other through like the inconvenience of the game mechanics.
Probably we are not catching fully your view, but I think there is one difference which I seeing in your question now. There is way to like be social, what you expecting, maybe for the core players, and there is also in the design something what need to be close to casual players, and in this case is this fast-paced matchmaking, for example, putting a group together of 6 people and nobody know each other. Then I think there is two different approaches, but it's again about different audiences, and I don't definitely agree. This is the trend, because this social is trend, and it's these guys from casual games will definitely move to something what will be more interactive, and they will more cooperate on the higher levels of these casual games. Then this is my view.
The other thing that I discover on online games is that people invent their own socializing, and they'll invent their own games. It's absolutely bonkers. You build a game and it's supposed to do something. There's a game out right now, it's been in beta test forever, Ghost, whatever it is, and there's an entire group of people who just crawl around in the grass. That's what they do. They don't shoot anything, they don't do anything, they're grass crawlers. And they've got their own little guild, and they log in and they do a bit of crawling around in the grass. And they're really big fans of it. That's a big thing for them. There's a group of people playing Ultima Online, it's been going for 20 years, and they meet, and they have this entire fabricated idea that they are fishermen. And they've been doing it for 12 years. And they've made up all this nonsense in the game that is them, oh yes, we're fishermen. Oh, this is where we fish. And they pretend to go out and fish. It's incredibly insane, and you can't stop them. So people are sort of like bound to socialize. I think what you're getting at is, as we've put in game mechanics to allow grouping, to allow people to go down instances, to allow missions to trigger, to allow public quest systems to trigger, looking for group pickups, rolling you into guilds, we've made that more casual than it used to be. But one of the reasons for that is because a lot of the new influx of people just aren't used to any of that system. They're not going to trend together. They're not going to meet that many people. They've got a much tighter online group than you would think they have. And what they're doing with the game mechanics, which are drop in and drop out, they're complete loot, reward, wash, repeat. The time slices are so small, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes. They don't need to build a massive social network, but they do need to be building a social network outside of those experiences. WoW's raid system is a really great example. People talk lovingly about 100-person raids and the first time they took down one of the great dragons. And that's great, But if you look at the server and the data and how it was playing, if they didn't move to smaller raids, the game would have died. Because there just wasn't enough 100 raid groups to go around. And so sometimes the design mechanics come about like that. Fallout 76, which right now is getting horrible press, is actually a studio making its first tentative steps into taking a very precious game that doesn't have a lot of twitch and putting them out into a kind of dangerous area. And everyone wants to slap them around the face and say how horrible they are. But actually, you can see them making some really interesting steps. And they've made a lot of right moves more than wrong ones. And they're socializing. Again, I've been watching people, they just pretend to be characters. They dress up as cops. And they go around and police the area. You can't design that. It's like those grass crawlers. So I don't think there's a policy to do it. But I think being vocal about the things you want is a good way of getting designers to listen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And let me have my last question on all of you, very quick one. So please, Pavel. So this whole panel was about blending of mobile and console games and how they are converting. So are those two words going to be one word in the future? Are we going to have one game market, for example, cross platforms? Are we going to merge more and more those games together?
I hope so. I really hope so. I think that a game is a game and game is a good game or a bad game, so I'm interested in good games. It really doesn't matter if it's in one market or other market, one platform or other platform.
Okay, thank you. Jan, same.
Yeah, I think the same thing. It's more about the controls, not about the platform itself. So if there's one type of controls like VR, the VR will be separated from touch screen stuff, but it doesn't mean like console, like Switch. It just means it's it can be a mobile with controllers, anything. So mobiles and consoles might become one thing in the future.
I think that definitely support Pavel idea. It's good and bad games, and there is now these two platforms which we compare, but there will be much more, and it's very difficult to say what happen like for a majority of the games. But I think there will be every time games which works on both platforms and games which works on particular platforms better way. This is my opinion of the like world of the games, which is very wide.
Thank you.
I treat it like books and comics. You can buy a comic, you can have a physical book, or you can go and watch it as a movie, or see it as a TV show, or you can read it on your iPad, or you can have a book that's been turned into a comic and you can read that. You can have a comic that's been turned into a book, or a book that's been turned into a movie. You're all experiencing the same thing, and sometimes it's on everything, and sometimes it's on one thing. And sometimes it's on one thing because it's the best medium for that thing. I'm not sure how you get a really high-precision shooter, to work particularly well on anything other than what it's on. I'm not sure how you do a high-arousal click game on anything other than what it's on. But that doesn't mean that there won't be lots of things on lots of things. But I treat it more like books, plays, comics, movies, TV. It stretches them through all different ways. And how you get to it doesn't matter. It only matters that when you get to it, you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it and then you find it in another format and that's also enjoyable, that's great. I think it's sort of going to end up there.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. And I believe in diversity, so I hope there will be more very weird devices or platforms in the future, maybe virtual platforms. And I really love that we have games on really small, pretty stupid mobile phones, and also we have VR, super expensive machines which can do powerful stuff. And I hope it will be just broader and broader. So that's my point.
So hopefully not, you say.
Exactly, hopefully not.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you coming to my panel, Pavel, Jan, Milos, Paul, and Kuba. Thank you.